So, welcome back to another Pickled Dragon Unscripted. We have a very amazing special guest today. Satine Phoenix is with us,
Hi.
um, and I have a lot of questions for her today regarding her work on the machinations of the Space Princess, which I've read this actually twice now, and I really like. And about D&D and gaming in general, Saki used to be like the DM's advice show, I think. Isn't that right? From back in the day. That was my first time I ever saw you do
Oh
anything. It was
yeah,
like,
GM tips.
yeah, DM
GM
tips. It was like
Sundry. Yeah.
energy, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean, you kind of worked with WotC for years or whatever, and you were, kind of really visible all over the place when it came to gaming. I think that was pretty darn cool. All the things that you did, and of course, we were real excited when you said, "Hey, yeah, let's talk about the machinations and see what the Space Princess is up to."
Couldn't even believe it. How what a
Yeah.
great day for us.
Ah, shucks, guys. Thanks.
Yeah. So, what there's actually, I when I saw this book, I took a look at the cover, and I was literally just kind of flipping through it, and that's normally, you get a new gaming book, you want to look at the art, and the first thing I thought of was the old 1981 cartoon Heavy Metal, which by the way, Dracoya, my wife had never seen. So
Really?
we sat down and watched it last night, and she loved
Yay.
it.
Oh,
And
it's awesome.
yeah, and she's like, why haven't you shown me this earlier? And I said, well, because we had kids for a long time, and that's just not going to happen. But yeah, so the I have some things I want to share before we get rolling. And for those of you who've never seen the original Heavy Metal cartoon, I'm not talking Heavy Metal 2000, which some of you might like. Not really my bag, but I'm going to just share with everybody a quick clip from Heavy Metal, if you will. And I'm going to put one of my favorite clips at the end. It's just a little longer. And so I don't want to like take up Satine's time with it, but here is the a clip. And for those of you who don't know, heavy metal is uh, basically just it's kind of like a bunch of different short stories where that all kind of have the same theme around an evil item called the Lochnar. So just real quick, this is only a minute and a half long. Um,
They split us up and took me to this weird castle-type place. I wanted to find out where they'd taken Catherine, but none of these guys seem to speak English.
They tell me you are Den of Earth, the one who dared to
I
steal the
think it needs to be
Phantom.
said that this muscle-bound character here,
I was a
he
shrimp,
actually was a
so I picked
super
that
nerd
place
on
up.
Earth, but when he
Where
portaled
is the
into
girl?
this
I am
world, he became
team
the
leader
super
of
buff guy. So he's like a super nerd,
the
scrawny super nerd inside of a buff guy's body.
well.
I love that.
We
yes.
face. Guards, castrate him.
Boy, I was pretty good at this stuff.
But yeah, there's that inner dialogue of the
Excellent.
nerd.
You are worthy to serve me.
Give me the girl or die.
Well, if I have a choice, I'll take death.
So be it.
It's so ridiculous.
You'll have to do better than that.
So heavy metal came out in late 70s, early 80s. Which one?
Yeah, 1981.
81. Yeah. So your instincts are correct. Absolutely correct. I'm a child of the 80s. I'm 45. So I was born in 80 and I grew up on Ralph Bakshi, Simon and Bass, and heavy metal. And the cool thing about heavy metal is every magazine that comes out is actually that. So the movie is a bunch of vignettes that are all kind of linked together with the same theme. Um, all the magazines are, even up to now, they're still like that too. Um, I so growing up on that kind of cartoon animation, Saturday morning cartoons and Ninja Turtles and
Yeah.
He-Man and She-Ra. So I'm actually an illustrator. So I just happened to take a side quest in my life and spend 13 years as a professional Dungeons and Dragons person. And it came about because I invented live stream Dungeons and Dragons in 2010. It was just like this fluke. But aside from that, like I went to art school for 5 years. I'm an art professor now, so like art was my life. But heavy metal, there was something about that sci-fi. I love the idea of like I know a lot of people don't like this, but this is sexy to me. Like it's fantasy, it's not real. My bikini clad characters have like mage armor, right? I want to see combat high heels. I love that like primal masculine, like ugh, and that like, oh, I'm a damsel. That's fantasy. Do I want that in my real life? No, but I love art about it. So I've been drawing since I was born, basically. Like this was a natural thing for me to create or to be a part of something like this. And when he asked me to do the art for it, it was like, duh, of course, this is my jam. I actually couldn't believe that he liked my art enough to like ask me to do that. And I still like that cover is one of my favorite, you know, like I'm a human anatomy professor now, but like and the anatomy it's not I can't look at it very much right now because I know so much more, but it's still some of my favorite art because it's just sexy, and those lizard guys that are holding up her throne, like there's something naughty and sexy about it.
It's kind of erotic. A lot of the book is very erotic in a way.
But like 80s erotic.
Yeah,
Yeah, over the
exactly.
top,
Yeah,
exaggerated, which is amazing. You
thanks.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I picked out some of my favorite art from the book, which obviously the cover I wanted to show off first because it's really awesome. And
What
it,
year was this written? I actually don't remember.
um, well, it must be fairly recent, right?
Oh, it was like 12, 15 years ago.
Oh, well, there you go.
Copyright 2000,
2013.
2013.
2013.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
this, all of this happened right around the time that we figured out how to live stream. And
Mm.
previous to this, I was a part. So for those of you that don't know, I did porn for a while. And I was part of a group with people who have been outed since then. But in that time and era, it was consensual and super fun. And we had a D&D game with porn stars and strippers. And it was called I Hit It With My Axe. And it was so much fun. And a lot of people, and that was like around the Gamergate era. So it was a whole thing. And I
I
somehow
love
managed to
that.
like skirt through and around. But it was hot. Like we were on The Escapist. I got interviewed by IO9 and Time Magazine and Wired. Oh my gosh, it's so funny because if I was my teacher, I'd rip myself a new one looking at the
Really?
anatomy on this art.
Is
You
it
know what
the
though?
anatomy that is bothering you now?
Yeah, because I literally critique students all day. But critique in a way to help them get better. But it's
Well,
not
yeah.
bad for back then, which is so funny.
Well,
It's
and
so
that's the
funny to
thing about
see.
art. My wife, she's an artist. She's a children's book author and illustrator, but she's also a sculptor, here in the New Orleans area and does the street art and whatnot. And she likes things that are not perfect. That imperfection makes it perfect, and I think that's something that really stands out about 80s art and the vibe
Yeah.
that you're going for is that it's
Mhm.
exaggerated and over the top, just and fun, and that's
Yeah, I
kind
mean,
of
look at her. She is just the queen. She's
Having
just
a great day.
luscious and she is just oozing happiness.
yes, she's
She's
got
doing
the
good.
lizard folk on their best behavior there.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's so fun. Oh my
Yeah.
God, this is great. This is going down memory lane. So it's been like what, 12 years since I did this. Like I don't remember all of the illustrations. There were so many. I'm so
There
grateful that he
were
gave
a
me the
lot
chance.
in this book. It was
Yeah.
really beautifully done. I loved how visual it was, and I think that's part of the reason it is so thick is because you do have just all of these great pictures all throughout. Almost every other page has something illustrated.
Oh man, this is so fun. And thank
I
you for
and
saying that.
Yeah, and I know that our focus right now is the art, but I really like the simplicity of the game system as well. It's kind of like a mix of
Yeah.
basic and third edition and Lamentations, the Flame Prince.
He's
Like,
really good at game design, right? And it's like you're in it to immerse yourself in the world, and he is so good at that. I'm really glad that you picked up on it. You don't have to overcomplicate things. People don't
Mm-mm.
need things overcomplicated. So I think one of the things that's coming up for me right now, so of course I grew up on Dungeons and Dragons. I've been playing that since I was 8 years old. And Coop is an illustrator that I really love. But the old Dungeons and Dragons books, Wizard magazines, they had that black and white line art. And so I prefer doing line art. This is like one of my first stints into digital coloring. Actually, this was like the year or the year before this, I just started doing digital coloring.
Oh,
So just
wow.
being like first attempt.
this is actually my favorite illustration. I know it's not like over the top or anything, but there's something like I immediately looked at this kid. I'm like, he's living on the streets, using Scion psychic powers to, hustle and get by. And I immediately had like this story that kind of unraveled in my head looking at this picture. And not everybody likes digital art, but I think that most people could look at a good piece and say, hey, this is what's going on. And for me, this one was the one that spoke the most to me, especially for the game setting,
Yeah.
because the game setting is basically there's like a group of player characters that have come together and they're all down and out and they're living in this, I wouldn't say dystopian future. I would call it more of like a realistic future. Like it's just dirty and gritty and run by unscrupulous people. And it's like if everything unfolds exactly the way the corporations want them to, that's the future that you get in
I
this
mean, it's
game.
all the sci-fi, right? Like
Yeah.
Firefly, Blade Runner, like it's all in it.
And I was thinking more like the 70s and 80s, like, Terror Planet. I don't know if you ever
Yeah.
saw that terrible movie or
It's
uh
like John Carter, right?
Yeah, John Carter, or I actually wrote down a list that immediately came to mind. And it was like Slave Girls from Beyond Infinity,
Yeah.
Star Slammer, The Phantom Empire, like all these really like cheesy futuristic films that have a high degree of like sexuality
You
and
are nailing my entire youth. You're like saying all the things. I love Mystery Science Theater. I love
yes.
old movies. I love bad movies. Beastmaster, you know, Conan is not bad. It's actually an excellent movie. But like those eras, that era, people were really playing with D&D and like their imagination and taking ideas that we have of like medieval and then really pushing it to the outer limits, like taking it to space or like, you know, whatever it is. They were really pushing the limits in the 70s and 80s because I
Oh
think that
yeah.
was the first, I mean, D&D came out in 74. So, yeah, Star Wars was out around then and it was
Hmm.
this big upheaval and like massive artistic blow up of the world where things were the imagination was being rewarded. You got Labyrinth, you got Dark Crystal, you've got Secret of Nim. I mean, like we
Yeah.
don't have films like that anymore. We really don't.
No, it's unfortunate. And Matt and I have spoken about this before, how a lot of the modern films nowadays, they rely so much on special effects, so heavily on it that the film loses its luster.
You
Yeah,
know,
one of the
I
things I
have
do in school is I also teach storytelling. So I teach sequential art, and it's storyboarding, and comic books because I'm also a comic book artist. After this, I actually ended up doing 3 graphic novels. So, this, like I said, this was such a leap of faith, and the first time I did a lot
This
of
was such a
visual stuff.
takeoff point for you
It
then.
really
This was
was.
like your growing experience, this entire book.
Yeah, it was like, can I do a project? Can I do what someone else wants me to do instead of like what my art? Oh, I love this one. Oh, his poor leg. It looks broken, but I love this one.
I
Uh,
thought like first time I saw this, I'm like, are those burns on his arms? And then I started thinking, man, what if it was like some space fungus that's slowly
I think that's what I
consuming
was
him?
going for. So I think
Yeah,
it was space fungus.
yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't look like a burn to me.
Yeah, that's
Well,
the
you know,
unfortunate part about
I
it.
I think it's pretty cool, but you know, I definitely when before I got hurt, I used to run games on weekends for kids at the game store. And we talk about these movies that were so instrumental to our development as gamers, and
Yeah.
people who ingest all of this sci-fi fantasy. Uh, but I had this list of movies I wanted my kids to watch all the time, like Dragon Slayer and Krull and
Yes.
and none of them, they weren't the Conan the Barbarians, the good ones, the Beastmasters and Hawk the Slayer and all those the cheesy ones that the kids could watch. But it you know, I can remember as a kid watching those movies and being like, okay, this is going into my game, you know?
Yeah.
And even today, like, but it's mostly from books now that I'll borrow from for my games. But
Well, think about it. Back then, latchkey kids, right? Like, we were left unsupervised. At least I was. Like very unsupervised. And I was living next to a library, so I was reading all the time. Reading was the only like new entertainment that I would have. But back then, we didn't have cable, right? We didn't have um, access to anything and everything. We didn't have a lot of movies coming out all the time. Like right now, I can go to Netflix and binge on new series and it have a different series every day. But back
Yeah.
then, I mean, I still actually have, I'm very nostalgic. I have all my game consoles, like my old ones, my Atari. Actually, I think I just sold my Atari, but it was from like early 80s, the 2600. But I even have all of my VHS and one of my favorite ones. So you'd watch it and you'd watch it over and over and over. So
And the
I've been
tape would wear
watching,
out.
yeah, so Labyrinth was like one of them that I watched every day for about 6 years. I
oh,
just had it on every day. Terminator was another one, and I have that one, and I would rewind it on certain ports, so it was like, or you'd like record from TV, right? So it would come on and you record it, and then you have like a VHS that has 2 or 3 films, and I would just watch them over and over and over again and they're drilled into your mind. Unlike now, where you watch something and then everybody critiques it, like, oh, that wasn't good, that was good. And then they move on to the next. And like yesterday, I just watched the Phoenician Scheme, and it's
okay,
such
yeah, I
a
just saw
good.
that.
It's Wes Anderson and Roman Coppola. So for those, movie files out there, that is a brilliant mashup, but it's like that inspires you to go watch it again. It's like I like I'm now trying to be more discerning on the entertainment I take in when like I get burned out. So I need to just like be horizontal and watch TV for like 10 hours. But now it's like I'm I'm from this conversation, I'm realizing that it's really important to want to ingest entertainment that lives with you and inspires you for like time. Mickey 17 actually is pretty exciting, pretty entertaining. And that way for me, I don't know if you guys have seen it yet. I don't know if it's
It's
on
on
Uh-huh.
my
like
list, actually.
yeah, but it's one of those like there's just hasn't been a lot that's so captivating in that way that all these other ones, I mean, you're literally talking about movies made 30, 40, 50 years ago. Oh my God, that feels weird, but like how many of the movies that you've watched in the last 3 years are you gonna say this about in 20 years?
No, that's absolutely true. I am a huge movie buff for really old films. I'm notorious for like bringing men home and showing them black and white movies.
Yes,
And
yes.
one of the things that I really loved is in a lot of the older films, they really had to rely on their acting skills. They didn't have a musical number in the background of every single scene. And a lot of the movies nowadays, they're very auditory, they're very messy audibly.
Yes. So, okay, that reminds me of what I actually was going to try to say about me teaching. It's how they're, first of all, like dialogue. Oh boy, if you can tell a story with as minimal dialogue as possible, like that's gonna elevate your storytelling. I was
Hmm.
just talking last night about horror. I don't like horror because it's too grotesque for me. But what I do love are things like The Thing, where the original Thing, absolutely elegant, make me afraid without showing me what it is. And then if I don't know if you guys have seen the second Thing, what a freaking bummer.
It
What
was
a
such a nightmare.
bummer.
Yeah, all
Yeah.
the
I don't want to see this
CGI.
creature. Like, I don't want to see, and first of all, like my second husband is a compositor, so he makes 3D look like it is immersed in real life. And
Hmm.
so I'm just like, they should have hired Joe because that one didn't work out very well. And it's hard. It takes you out, but it takes you so far out that like your little child, your inner child's disappointed. Because because like we watch these things and we're not just watching them, our inner children are watching them, and we get that feeling like if I don't know if you guys like Transformer movies. Like when I see a Transformer movie, I'm like, oh, I'm a 5-year-old boy, I'm gonna enjoy it like a 5-year-old boy, like yeah. But if you're taken out, like you can't fill in the blanks, right? When people make art, it's like they don't realize that like you're making 50% of the art. The other 50%, it's like a conversation with the viewer, right? The viewer also puts in. So if you put too much in, you don't allow the viewer to kind of come in out of their soul and have a conversation with you. And I kind of had that similar feeling with the Hobbit movies. So I'm a huge fan. I had like Ralph Bakshi animation cells of the old Hobbit, or Lord of the Rings. I think he did Lord of the Rings. I can't remember. But obsessed, right? But there was something weird about having it in 3D. I got sick because I was just like, it's too, there's like your eye. God, I feel like I'm about to teach a master class on illustration and like storytelling. The eye doesn't want to see everything in perfect clarity. When you look at something, you focus in on that, but like good photography, everything else blurs out, right? So if you're going to tell a story, like, what is the first thing you see? What's the secondary thing you see? And then you see everything. And it happens in a snapshot, but you also really need that. So good photography will have like the focus here, and then the background will be blurred out with the f-stop, right?
Hmm.
That's storytelling. And so it's like animations, movies, the storytelling is elevated because you're now using like your focus through time. Like I want to be able to experience what you're trying to share by focusing in here, and then you tell me where I need to go. I don't even want to see the guy behind him that's about to stab him until I focus and then you show me that's what I'm looking at. And that
Hmm.
goes with D&D and tabletop games too. Like I hated when people, and I'm like some of the best storytellers. I've been very, very lucky in my gaming experience. But boy, oh boy, guys really like to do exposition.
Oh my gosh, I know.
I say guys, I'm being super sexist here. Actually, that's just my experience because I also haven't had a lot of female game masters. Maybe
Oh,
I've
well, I'm
had,
right here. We should game sometime.
hi, yeah, it'd be great. I would like to play. Um, and so when I say guys, I'm actually just saying it because back in, my entire life, it was all guys. I can't even tell you. So once I started getting into like public gaming after the web series, I hit it with my axe. I would show up to conventions and people would laugh at me. Because of course I'm dressed up as my character, because duh. But like people would laugh at me and ridicule me until they thought that I would leave. And of course I'm Satine Phoenix. I'm not gonna leave, especially if you're bullying me.
I
Hell
love
no.
that.
Right? And so back then, women were not like invited. Women were pushed out unless they were a daughter or a wife, like their
Hmm.
families, which that's a whole different conversation. I do love them. But like It took me 3 or 4 years of busting my way into gaming conventions all over America to get them to realize that women were showing up. And I say me and my girlfriends, and it was a thing. And I would go to 10 to 20 conventions a year. And by the time I ended up with Dungeons and Dragons, we did a lot of work to allow women and non-binary and transgender folks to be able to be accepted there because it was Grognard City, right?
It
So,
still is. I walk around at some of my cons and I swear I'm probably the only woman there that shows up without a boyfriend.
Bill, where are you?
Well, let's see, like which conventions?
No, no, where are you in the world?
Oh, I'm in the Northeast area.
Oh, okay, cool.
But you're
Yeah.
going to a
So
lot
maybe
of
it was just like from
you're
the
going to a lot of painting
Southwest.
conventions and
Yeah, I'm going
which
to
is
a
like a
lot of
lot of war
miniature,
gamers.
a lot of miniature painting conventions, a lot of Warhammer
Oh, so
cons.
those are even different. I like didn't even I went and just looked around and I was like, "Oh, this is not for me." So that's like then you've got your Warhammer and then you've got your tabletop game, which is different than Warhammer, which is different than board games,
Yep,
right? And
very
thou shalt
different.
not cross those lines sometimes.
Yeah,
Yeah, people get very upset about it.
I know we have a friend, her moniker is the War Mistress, and has, she stuck her foot into the door of Warhammer and just refuses to pull it out. She's just like,
Yeah, that's what I'm
you're gonna
talking
accept
about.
me or not, and she's gone through this arc, and she has her own YouTube channel, but she's gone through this arc, of struggle and finally, just kind of like she's found her niche and found her group that has her back and, and she competes in these tournaments and I always think it's pretty cool. We did a show, um, boy, a couple of years ago with her and and she shared all of her hate mail that she would get, all of her post tournament hate mail, and it was
God,
just like,
what a
you
waste
know,
of energy.
yeah, I mean, it's just like I think that says a lot more about those people that they have to take the time to do that than anything, how dare this person, come into our space kind of thing. It's like, you don't need to use that energy like that. Like it's like, why don't you use that energy to go try to improve yourself in some
Well, when
way?
you're on this side of the screen, and I say like her side, my side, there is a point where you have to realize that everything's a projection. So the hate mail is a projection, but so is the love mail. And you take your ego and you just say thank you. And then you hope that they don't hurt themselves or me or anyone else. Because well, now I'm a life coach, right? And I specifically help people with PTSD and developmental trauma. And man, when a person's inner child is blended with their adult self, it is so hard because they don't realize it's happening. So they get
Right.
triggered and then justice, I need to say something. And it's like, okay, well, how much of that is this present moment and how much of it is you not having the chance to have said that when you were young? So
Hmm.
now when it comes at me, I'm like, okay, well, sure, maybe this situation triggers that person and also have compassion and grace for them to not take it into my body system. And so I can stop. And sometimes I'll be like, oh, wait, what? I'm like, no, 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 no. Like they are hurting and I may have been like 1% of that. I may have been 20% of that. But really there's much more going on than we know and maybe even they know.
Yeah, the reactions are not, they don't start and end with you.
No.
I know that since I started becoming a distributor on this side. So, oh, and here's this good side step. If you guys want any miniature paints or miniatures, go to dracoya.com and use promo code PICKLED and you can get 10% off your first order.
Yay.
Dracoya.com. All right. So, ever since Thank you. Ever since I started being the main distributor for Chimera Paints and some other companies, I've noticed myself I'm getting a lot more hate than I used to, and from people who I didn't even get hate from before. So I feel like as a woman in this industry, you're always going to get a certain amount of hate, and that just came with the territory, and people were jealous and upset, and I had no business in their world. Fine, whatever. But the more I've been involved, the further I got in. And now that I'm actually really more on the business side, I somehow am getting more hate. People like they really don't like seeing women do well in this industry. Not everyone. This is a very small
It's
minority,
enough
mind
though.
you.
It's enough
It
to be
is.
jarring and unhealthy and really showcase where the pain points are in the community, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, why is that okay to send hate mail? Why is has it been okay to be aggressive with your communication with another person in general, right? It's like at no point would I ever teach my stepdaughter that she should yell at somebody or demean somebody or belittle somebody or judge somebody or shame somebody in any way, shape, or form. So if somebody is doing that, they're basically repeating what they've experienced, and that is concerning. So one of the reasons why I was like kind of in the long run, in the end of it all, very gracious to have stepped back from the public persona in gaming is because I like don't have to exist in that anymore, right? And when you can just work and like I still game, like of course, I literally have Dungeons and Dragons tattooed on my throat. Like you can't take D&D from me.
Yeah.
But like I am so grateful to not be immersed in that and like and be a place for people to like jump into. I don't want it, but also like now my body repels it, right? So it's like somebody comes after me, it doesn't hurt as much.
You have to
Right? It's not a
protect your
thing.
safe space, you know?
Yeah, but it's more like the Matrix. You just dodge out of the way and you're like, oh, that was hate. That's generational trauma and it's going past me now. Right? And it's like, I don't have to be like, fuck you, trolls. It's really like, oh gosh, I really hope that one day that you can actually see what you're doing, the shame that you're trying to inject into another person, the bullying that you think is justice and righteousness. Like I hope that you can see it and take it out of yourself so you can find this calm sense that you actually really have inside of you. Because for people who've done the healing and they've done the shadow work, like you just don't have that in you.
Empathy. I found that when you have a certain level of healing within yourself of your own trauma, and you try to approach these situations with a high level of empathy, then it is a lot easier to dodge the craziness that gets thrown at you because you can identify it for what it is. Somebody is in pain and they haven't figured out what they need to figure out.
Yeah, it's really interesting to say empathy. So there's sympathy, empathy, and compassion, right? It's almost like you have to move through them. And you can have empathy for someone, but if you hold on to it too long, it becomes a part of you. So you actually have to move to compassion. And, you can have the door open if they want to like heal through that and move forward with you, you can, but empathy can be very dangerous if you're there too long.
I can
Compassion
understand that.
says, empathy says, I can put myself in your shoes. I can see where you're at. Compassion says, for where you're at, I see you. I had the empathy for you. Now I hold space and just, I can be a safe space around you and not get pulled into the whole bunch of things that I could be pulled into.
You've done a lot of healing in the last few years,
Boy,
especially
oh
since you,
boy, I learned some lessons.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Wisdom,
yeah, you
you know,
know,
like
I'm not gonna like, I'm not gonna like try to claim I have any kind of insight into this kind of conversation that you guys are going on, but I do have something I would like to share. Something that we have talked about doing a show on, but I'm just gonna show you a glimpse of it because I think it's really, it pertains to what you're talking about, but it's also very interesting in that it came from 1980, the TSR guys from 1980. So let me just show you this real quick because I think those guys were well aware of what was going on in the gaming world at the
Oh
time.
my goodness. This
And
is
it's
when wonderful. This is Dragon Magazine, July 1980.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and what I found interesting is, they went and they talked to a number of ladies who were gaming at the time. And they said, what are some things that you are encountering, and in some cases I think there was one case here where the lady was like, I just have a great time, we don't have any problems, but for the most part they were, virtually every lady in the article had run into many of the things that you're talking about. So I don't want to give away too much because we do want to do a whole show on this article. Like I think it's very profound, and I think it flies in the face of everybody who want to kind of attack the old guard for just ignoring these issues. I think there's like this perception that Gary Gygax was just like this mean guy who wanted to throw everyone under the bus. And we've done a number of videos on it, but we never touched on this article. And it has quite a lot of very good points to make.
Well, there's a
So
lot of women who worked back then in D&D
yes,
or TSR, illustrators, like there's a lot more women involved. It's just they weren't known. They were just doing it. I can't wait for there to be a world where it's just people who play.
I think we're getting there.
We're
There's a
much
huge
closer than we were 15 years ago, let me tell you.
Well, and then the last 5 years, so I've been doing a lot of research on this particular topic, but in the last 5 years, I've noticed a huge push forward to use Dungeons and Dragons, not just as a game, but also as a really great tool to help teach people social skills, to help teach people how to work together in groups. And they've done tons of studies on this. They've
Yeah.
had D&D in prison systems
Yeah.
where they have all these conflicting games, but if you have one person from all each one of these gangs, they sit down and they play D&D together, and they're able to create a sense of teamwork. Suddenly it doesn't really matter where you're from because you're an orc, you're an elf, you're a gnome, you're this thing, and that's what's more important.
Yeah, it's really cool because there's like neuroscience behind this. So there is a book called The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. And he
God, that was a
talks
hard
about
read for me.
I love academic books. I'm
Me
really
too.
such a nerd. But this one is really interesting. So back when he wrote it, it was gaming wasn't necessarily like a thing that people did for help.
Hmm.
But he talks about joining and this is specifically for people like me who have developmental childhood trauma and also very similar military vets. We have similar trauma that actually rewires and restructures brain, which is cuckoo pants, right?
Hmm.
So the neurology says that there's a couple things. There's like quantum jumping and the idea that your brain doesn't know what's real and what's not real. So when you give it information, it takes the information. So you have all of this trauma and all this stuff that's happened. But if you essentially, what I got from it is if you join a local theater, is what he said. But if you have a group around a table and you have people that you are working with and collaborating, cooperating with, and you gain wins, you can have a 3-year adventure in the matter of like 2 weeks that actually not replaces, but adds to your memories. Even though you're
Hmm.
only playing like once a week, you still get that experience. So you're like getting more life in your life, overriding those negative experiences with positive experiences. So the big issue I found right before everything exploded, like right before COVID, really, was that there'd always be like somebody at the table who would piss somebody off or they would do some things that nobody understands. But think about it, right? I have game mastered for hundreds of people. People come to my table. I don't know who they are. I'm like reading them and doing all sorts of stuff, but like I'm going into their psyches. Every
Hmm.
time we do a show, a live stream show, we're not only going into the psyche and the 6-year-old that everyone shows up at the table with, but everyone who's watching. They're watching from their 6-year-old self, that pure play imagination self. So all of the game masters out there who don't realize the power of what they're doing and the sensitivity and how careful you have to be as a game master. Like, I went back to school for psychology because I was like, there's something I'm missing. This is not good. And, shaming people. I had one person who table flipped. He was triggered and he felt violated and betrayed, and it was bad. It was so bad. And it was so bad because everyone else felt uncomfortable and didn't know how to handle it. And so basically they kicked him out. So here's somebody who got triggered, had a reaction. Everyone else said, "We can't handle your emotions. We're kicking you out." Now that person is both betrayed and ostracized. Not good, not healthy. And what am I supposed to do? Back then, I didn't have the skills. I do now. So everybody at my table now, I mean, I don't like publish that I'm doing games, but of course I'm doing games because come on, but I do them with the idea of, and like part of what I'm rewriting into Sirens, the Kickstarter that we did, is like how to be a more attentive and present game master and sensitive game master in a way that you don't have to like go and learn psychology, but at least be a little more aware of what's happening because we are so tender on the inside. So what I've done is I've really like learned that, and I've taken that into the healing and the coaching that I do. So I gamify the coaching and the healing by using visualization like Dungeons and Dragons, getting that like opening up the psyche of a person to be able to meet themselves in that very like tabletop gaming kind of way. And then watching them heal, and then watching the people at the table when I do this at the table in a very subtle way. People don't realize I'm doing it, but I'm showing them how to care for each other, and it is amazing. It is so beautiful. So when you say like people use it to help socialize, there is even a further way. And I've interviewed a lot of different people who are using psychology and gaming in like group sessions and stuff. But like there's so much more we can do. But that means the game master's got to go heal because you cannot be
Yeah.
triggered as a game master. If you are triggered and you are open, you've opened up all those players and their little kids, like you could re-traumatize them.
Hmm.
Like you are the authority figure, right? How scary is that? Which is why the dynamics over more than like 3 months usually kind of fall apart in games, because that's a long time to be vulnerable around people that you think you're just playing a game, an escapist game with, but really you're like rewiring your body system.
I love this. There's
You
actually
know,
a small chapter in here about how to be a good dungeon master. And one of the paragraphs that they have in here, and it literally just says, "Don't be a dick."
you know,
Yeah, it's classic.
I'm kind of like tagging onto something that you were mentioning about learning how to socialize and whatnot. But I also found from my own experience, I had my youngest son was autistic, and he really struggled with social situations, and bullies especially. And the game, because I started my kids on gaming, and when we say Dungeons and Dragons, I think we it's fair to say that it's like saying I want a Coke. It's like a
I am
generic way of
100%
saying,
with you. Yes.
yeah, tabletop RPGs,
Pop
right? Like,
community. Yeah.
because we played a variety of games, and just the wins, like scoring wins to somebody who isn't accustomed to that,
Hmm.
can be important to building confidence. And, a little bit of confidence can go a long way to somebody who's struggling. And I know that firsthand, you know, and I saw a kid go from, kind of like, shrugging his shoulders and folding in like a flower, like closing in to somebody who was running his own games. And, it made gaming made such a difference in general. And I can't, there's a lot of people who kind of scoff at the touchy feely things, but for me, in my youth and having all, the issues that I had growing up, and then of course with my own kids, I can't stress enough like how much gaming in general can really make a person grow uh, much beyond like you know yes, it's just a game, but to some people, it can explode into other things, and give them the confidence to go out and in my case of my son, he ended up getting a job. He ended up moving out on his own. We never thought he would never ever move out on
That's
his own
awesome.
ever in a million years. And it really, I truly, 100% believe it started with gaming because without it, he wouldn't have had the social interactions and the confidence to go out and do those things. You know,
Absolutely. When they
Can you
transfer from doing gaming to game mastering, that's even
yeah,
another level.
do you want to tell us a little bit more about your Kickstarter?
Yeah, it was awesome. And then everything blew up after when I got canceled. And so it was like on hiatus. But in the last year, I guess I picked it back up again 9 months ago. I don't know. But yeah, it's this massive tome that was written by like 20 plus people. And I'm just trying to see it through one section at a time, going
Yeah.
through. I've got an editor who's been helping me. We have all the art, all the writers have been paid. That whole junk is garbage that we didn't, but all those people have been paid. The only thing that hasn't, I've never seen any of the money we raised like 300,000 on the front end and 100 in the back end. I have no idea. The money is
I,
gone, but like I'm still working on it and it feels really good.
you're trying to do it right this time and not let somebody else steal it or your joy.
Yeah, like the idea was freaking amazing. And I started Sirens in 2017 as a live stream, and it was a bunch of cosplayers and divas who were like larger than life, and they dressed up in everything, and we performed, for Dungeons and Dragons. We were on D&D's channel for a while. This is 2017. It feels like a million years ago, but like we did this for 3, 4 years, and it was just like I was working for D&D in live streaming.
Hmm.
And I was like, I want to come up with something really fun. How about like, and I have a character that I made when I was 12. Her name is Vlanya Umvada. She's an elf, chronomancer, and spy master. So basically, she hires mercenaries and they sets them out into the world as spies in the guise of performance troops, so bands or circus performers or whatever. So that's the premise of the game. So Sirens of the Realms was the story that we were telling in the live stream. And then I was like, how cool would it be for people to be the band? And of course, it's like no evil characters. Everyone has to work together. It's all about compounding abilities, learning how to volley and say, "Oh, I'm not good at this, but that person's good at this."
I love that. And that's what I liked
Yeah.
about the original Dungeons and Dragons versus a lot of this new 5e stuff where
Yeah, like
everyone and their sister
flanking.
cousin has a
Yeah.
healing spell. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is really fun. It's usually like, so if somebody is a barbarian with a high strength, but they're not a bard, they could still play, a percussionist. So we have 10 subclasses, and it's so much fun. We use auras. So basically you can have multiple bards in the same area and then their auras might overlap. So they have benefits and then the other ones have benefits and then they can each benefit from that. But like a performer, if you're in line of sight or if they can hear you, then you get to experience it. And yeah, it's really fun. I'm very excited, very proud of it. The world is beautiful. The bad guys are awful. The spies are going after the Emerald Cabal, who are creating this thing called the Elixir of the Gods, which is like a beauty pyramid scheme. And so they're like your whole purpose is to destroy this beauty pyramid scheme that's taking over all the nobles and like
Oh, I love that.
it's so silly. And it's especially silly because I mean, it's super silly. I'm into longevity and anti-aging, so I'm in like
So
the
am
wellness
I.
sphere now. And so it's like, of course, I take peptides. I like get my face done, and here I am making fun of it in this game where like these evil people are charging an arm and a leg for the serum that people get addicted to. So it's
Yeah.
like it's so goofy, but I am madly in love with this story. I'm madly in love with the campaign and the dynamics of it, and it was really awesome to like really create something after D&D made the carnival whatever. I did not enjoy that. It's too bubblegum for me. I want like old D&D where you
Gritty.
die. Like you could get maimed, you could die. There's risks. Someone could take your personality, they could take your soul. Like I want dangerous games that are also beautiful and like performers. It's like a big Burning Man city in the desert, right? But it's like
Sensual.
Venice and um Vegas. So it's
Yeah.
like this, and it's discs, districts, and it's vertical. So the city goes up, and it's so unique and so colorful. And yet the dark side of it is like, I don't want to spoil or anything, so I won't tell you how dark it gets, but it gets really dark. And I'm really proud of myself because having done really intense shadow work, it's like if things are so bubblegum and joyful, like there is an equal darkness on the other side. And once we can really understand that that's how the world works and how like we work as human beings, now we can play within that. And for those of you who don't like to play in darkness, then this is not for you. But for those of you who do, like, oh man, I have no fear. I am not reining anything back. So when I worked for D&D, we weren't allowed to say things. There were words we're not allowed to use. There were concepts we weren't allowed to explore because for a number of reasons. I will never be censored like that ever again. Ever.
Yes.
My
Love
stories
that.
are dark and dangerous and ridiculous and playful. So, yeah, this is what that brings. And I'm about to make it a little more twisted. And yeah,
If you ever need any alpha players
I do
or
actually. I do. We're in the so we
I'd
we
love to
actually
help.
have the players material out because I'm basically there's like 4 or 5 sections, and instead of waiting till the whole thing is done because people have been waiting for years, so I
Yeah.
got the player section out. I got the setting section out. I'll send you guys that stuff, and then right now we're working on the quest masters because I have a thing called Satine's Quest, which is like adventures in the real world where we go to like Singapore, we go to a castle, we go to a mansion, we go all over the world. We did a cruise, it was amazing. So because of Satine's Quest, I call the game masters quest masters. We have a quest master section, and then we have 20 adventures. So the main story is 10 adventures, and then we have 10 side quests. That's a lot. And everyone like I was like, "Oh, we've got like 90% done." And then we did, but then of course there has to be edits and then there has to be um like you just have to like look at it 5 more times and then you have to like tweak it and make sure it all links up and then it turns out there was Swiss cheese and so I have to go back in and then link other things and that part so the quest master and the actual stories it's not easy but it's so
Yeah,
much fun.
I know that having written and published a number of adventures, that playtesting is always the time sink. Like, um, some of my adventures are like 30 pages, some of them are like 100 pages, and it seems like it doesn't matter how long it is, it's still hundreds of hours of you cajoling people into running the exact same thing again, to test, okay, I've changed it because last time, X, Y, or Z went wrong, and I really want this to be a challenge. And it's infuriating at points, but when you get it right, and I think that is one thing. I know that the folks who backed your Kickstarter have been waiting a while, and I think that what I'm hearing is you really want it to be right. I mean, you could probably rush it out and say, "Here you go. This is what you asked for." But
Oh,
I'm
people are gonna
sure.
poop on it no matter what. So at least if I put it out for my heart and for what I know is right and as a storyteller, that is what's gonna matter. And then the people who poop on it, they're gonna poop on it. But the people who like it are gonna like it. The thing about the play testing is really interesting. I play tested a ton of stuff, official, non-official stuff, and what I really like, and this is why I'm putting so much effort and patience into the Questmaster material, is it's really saying you can run this by the book, but you got to know what the intent is. The intent here is I want to make them, I want to push the players as far as I can. I want one survivor in this scene. I want you to OP the monsters. I want you to push, but then pull back, right? So as a game master, it's not just these are the stats. It's these are the stats. This is the intention. This is how you release the spells in a certain way to get the effect. Now you're a quest master, so you can do whatever you want, but the intent, that's what I want you to focus on. And it's almost like the numbers don't even matter, but at a certain point they don't even matter because I want to most of what I do as a quest master, game master, is I want to bring people to the edge and then give them an opportunity to win. I will always beat the shit out of them and then like get them reduce their resources. Oh, that makes me so happy. Get them to like use all their spells, but then
Yeah.
give them the opportunity to rise up and overcome when they thought that when everything was going to be fall apart.
That's the best. That is the best way to play.
especially with 5e. Like 5e, that is
So,
I've had so many DMs ask me, hey, what do I do in this circumstance? This is what I want to do. And I'm like, well, before you do that, you've got to run them down a little bit because the DMG, if you read it, it says, make sure you have one encounter, then a short rest, then an encounter, then a long rest. And like in 5e, if you do that, you'll never have a challenge
Wait,
because
that is just to get you in the door of game mastering.
yes, yes.
Like, here is the intro. And once you can do that, now you can be a storyteller. Now you can understand why an encounter and like why a combat encounter, why a puzzle, why a social encounter. Because a lot of game masters, they go in and they don't really know what to do, but they need a skeleton. And then they build on that because they get attached to something. Oh, I actually really like this. Oh, I have an idea. And then you add and you add and you add. But until then, it's like it's martial arts,
Yeah,
you
and
got to start at white belt.
it's tough because rules wise 5e isn't that bad, but when you're talking about, a group of 4 or 5 characters, they can do a lot once they've started stacking up levels.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so you really need to kind of run around. And, you know, it's kind of part of the reason why I like to dabble in other game systems, kind of like keep my love of the game fresh because like we're just now coming to a conclusion in our campaign, and then we're going to be playing Alien RPG next, and
Oh, so cool. So
yeah, it's a
cool.
great addictive. It's my favorite game system ever, but um, the players have to kind of get used to being nervous again because that game system is not forgiving at all. And I like to really push my players to the edge, even in 5e. It might be 5 or 10 encounters before they get a rest. Just like
Yeah.
I
you've
love
got
that.
to you've got to push them,
You're kindred.
and you've got to really raise the tension to make that final victory meaningful, and then everyone's just like, oh, get that cheer at the table that um, that is like my favorite moment in any game session is that die roll that bails them all out and everyone cheers and no one's sitting down.
Yeah.
Uh, that is the best to me. Which actually brings me to my next question for you. This we've been talking. We've got a little community channel where we talk to folks, and let me share this because I like sharing things. I'm a visual person. So there's this Dr.
Oh,
Manhattan from The
yes.
Watchmen here, and it's October 1986. Someone in a game store is saying that GURPS is a D&D killer. 1991, someone is saying that Vampire the Masquerade is a D&D killer. And now it's Daggerheart is a D&D. And Daggerheart did outsell the new D&D version. Uh, so as somebody who's worked for them and as somebody who has um, obviously been really deep into that community. What do you think of what WotC's doing with the game now? I know that it feels like it's kind of been put on a shelf a little bit.
So I think one of my superpowers is to not get locked into minutia. When you take a step back and look at history, you can see the rhythm of things. D&D every 10 to 15 years makes a comeback. They rise hot and heavy, and it's rock star. I was a freaking rock star back in my gaming days. I'm not anymore, and that's the cycle of things. Things don't last forever, but D&D doesn't die. And the magic of D&D is that it gets hot and then it goes down, and then nostalgia makes it come back, and it's like generation skips a generation, generation skips a generation, because people are having kids, introducing their kids to it. I knew this was going to happen. I called it, and it will happen, and it happens again and again, and it will happen again, and it'll rise up. Someone will make a new, 7 version, IO 16 max, whatever.
Yeah.
There'll be a new edition, maybe, because there was third edition and 3.5, and then fourth, and then five. Like, it just is. That's just the way of D&D. So if you can kick back and go, wow, they need a break, that's normal and that's okay. And what
Hmm.
that, like you said, it's you play other games and then you bring it back to D&D, right? And maybe you don't bring it back because you go somewhere else, but it's in the ether. So D&D rises and falls, and there is no killer. People are so black and white. Like, come on, people, relax. Everything's all up in arms. Like, oh my God, everyone's so dramatic about like gaming. It's a game. People have been
I
playing
like you more
strategy
and
games.
more.
Huh?
I like you more and more.
Thanks.
People do need to relax. It's a
Yeah,
freaking
relax.
game.
It's a game. The big thing about the Grognard stuff was that I love Grognards because I like old guard. There's wisdom there, but also
Yeah.
like it's your security blanket, right? It's the thing that made you feel safe in the 80s when people were bullying you and you're in the basement and you held on to that security blanket because that's where your confidence came from. And and so it's like, don't come into my game and this game's gonna die. And this is like, know what's fantasy and know what's reality. And when you can be all up in arms in your game, great. But then reality is chill out, calm down. Entertainment moves and flows. You're allowed an opinion. Everyone's allowed an opinion, but don't force it on other people. Have
Oh,
conversations, but don't bully another person because they don't agree with you.
I love that. I completely agree. I think Matt and I have talked about that many times in some of our videos about how everyone's entitled to play the game the way that they'd like to play it, and you just don't need to enforce that into other people because Matt's had that happen, especially at GaryCon, where people come in and just tell him how to play, and he's like,
It's
"We
so
don't need
weird.
that."
I would never, aside from telling people how to play, I would never tell people how to play. That was a joke because of GM tips.
Yeah, I got it.
But
Yeah.
aside
Yeah,
from
that
that,
was
like there's a time and a
advice. That's not
place.
telling. Right? Advice is one
Yeah,
thing.
sharing information. But
Right.
like I said, it all comes back to don't bully people and know what bullying is. Know when you're doing it and stop. Don't judge people. Like, why are you judging? Do you want people to judge you? Why is that okay?
I've frequently been surprised at the number of people who get upset with us when we do a video or we talk about, we just don't want politics in our games. Like when you come to the table, let's just like have a good time and focus on what's going on instead of what's going on out there.
Mhm.
And there are boy, we get a lot of pushback about well, politics is personal or what all this stuff and it's like not at my game table. I'm there to like decompress and have a good time.
And that's your consent, right? So it's like, okay, here's the other thing, boundaries. If you say, please no, like no politics at this table, that person that wants to talk about politics, go find a table that wants to talk politics. Why force your way into something you don't have to? And why
Consent
are
is
you
sexy.
crossing someone's boundary? Why don't you respect them? Where is your self-respect? You want other people to respect you? Like, come on, man. So that's my other
Yeah,
microphone.
and like you said earlier, I I certainly have never wished D&D to actually find that final death. Like I'm somebody who, I love history. My first degree was in history. I love the legacy of things, and the idea that D&D may someday just like be out of print and stuck on a dusty shelf someday, that's not for me. Like no matter how much I dislike what Hasbro does or their policies or whatever, I certainly never wish that for D&D because, you know, it's one of those things that I can look back on and look at the evolution of the game and see how I've changed along with it and how there are a number of different um uh cultural phenomenons, whether it's literature or movies or whatever that I associate with D&D because I always drug all that stuff in when running games. That to me, that continuity is important to me. Like, maybe you're somebody out there just wanting it to die so that no one else can monkey with it, but I'm not one of those people,
Well,
you know.
like think about it. As long as there is storytelling, as long as we are capable of using our imaginations and there's storytelling, there will always be D&D. And the reason why I say that is because D&D has been the most simplified way of sharing stories, especially in 5th edition. And in the was it page 3 and 4, it's like these are suggestions, do whatever you want. And that homebrew, like all of this stuff where we do live streams, all of the public performances, that's like when you're playing with people that you maybe not don't know very well, you're doing it as a performance, but when it comes down to the end of it, and this is what I learned in the last couple of years, is D&D is part of my heart because I love storytelling, and my homebrew is my homebrew, and the players at my table, they love my homebrew, and then it grows with them, and it's art. It's just storytelling. And so D&D will never die because our imaginations can't die.
I love that. I'm down with
Well
that.
said.
That's fantastic. Because I, as somebody who grew up with in the late 70s, early 80s with all these learning disabilities that they didn't have a clue about, D&D was the one thing that I could like sit down and my parents could actually get me to read, and kind of like fight through those things. Um, so I always feel kind of a little bit indebted to the whole community, the D&D RPG
Well,
genre.
here's the thing is, are you indebted to the community or your connection with the game itself? So for instance, I love community because I'm a community builder. It's like in my veins. But when I first started playing D&D, I picked it up at 8. I didn't actually play a game with other people until I was 12. And so it for me it was like it was just exploration. It was this awakening of story. I mean, I play with myself because I'm very imaginative, but like for me, I also my predator started abusing me at 8. And so here I am making characters that I couldn't defend myself. I'm 8-year-old little girl, could not defend myself night after night. But I was making a character and I'd focus on her and she would defeat monsters with her imaginary friends, you know? And like that helped me, like you were saying, build the confidence to get through to the next day and to like realize that there's a way out, there is another moment where I will. And it wasn't until I was 21 that I finally built the courage to confront that person and then walk out of their life,
Good for you. That's a
And it's
very hard
like,
thing to do.
but it was the character that like, and I love books, I read all the time, but it was me building the character over time. And then once I became old enough to and played with other people, like I would test little things. I would test my sexuality, I would test my fierceness, my sassiness, I would test my rogueness, and it would either work or it wouldn't work. And then eventually over time I was like, that me trying those things out building my own courage, right, raising in levels, right, which is what I've done. Like I want to be stronger, I work out. I want to be smarter, I take cerebrolizin, peptides, and I read, But
Yeah.
it's like without D&D for me, I would not be the woman I am today. Which is why I have this tattoo on my throat. It's not this isn't the community. This is what it means to me as a person.
That's beautiful.
Thanks.
For sure. And I when I think about the community, because I started in on cons in the mid 80s, I think was my first con. And I was a forever GM from the early 80s on.
Thank you for the
So
service.
and I was like, I got to play in one long-term campaign ever, and that was in the late 80s. And so it was just like, I would go to cons and I would run for players. And so to me, there's like no separation between all those hundreds and hundreds of people that I GM for in the game itself. And there are folks out there who they could probably articulate this better. But you know, I definitely think that D&D kind of transcends its current IP ownership, and um, because there are so many editions out there and there's so many books out there, anyone can pick up any book at any time and find inspiration. And I just, for me, it is one of those things where like, even in my new, we moved down to New Orleans a few years back, and down here even, we've talked about this in past videos, it's there's still kind of that satanic panic kind of thing going on where
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
people like there's no
No.
game conventions down here. There's no
Really?
yes. And
Wow.
the game store owners, well really there's one major one now. But he's just like, it's still not really a thing to be able to walk down the street with your player's handbook, like, and so I'm just like being a Midwestern grown-up guy where it was just a commonplace thing. I'm just like, we need to like wave the banner and get these people out
But
because,
isn't there like voodoo, like real voodoo down there? Like,
Yeah.
well, you got to
But
remember, New Orleans itself is like a little bubble, a little
yeah.
microcosm of openness, and then you get out from further,
Oh,
and then
okay,
it's
okay.
like
it's not an
really,
accurate representation of the rest of the state. Kind of like how
Got it.
Austin isn't actually Texas.
I heard that. Yeah.
Texas
so
joke for you people.
so it's one of those things like, but you know what's great is that my little neighborhood that we moved into, they they weren't like, these D&D players. They're sacrificing goats or whatever. They were like, what is, they like never heard of it even because it's been so thoroughly squashed.
Wow.
And my neighbor who's like 84, I had a player accidentally go to his house instead of mine. And the guy answers the door, took one look at all the tattoos and the books and everything, goes, the nerds are next door,
That's
which I
so funny.
love.
Which is
Uh,
crazy because you've got like Fortnite and you've got these games, these like Five Night Freddy's, you've got um, Call of Duty. You got these games that are brutal. And you've got kids screaming obscenities at each other, which I can't even wrap my head around. I've heard it twice in real life, and I was like, oh. And so it's audacious to hear that people still think of D&D like that when like people are really ruining each other's lives in those games.
yeah, and it's a different, like, I love living down here. Love it. Like I can't even describe it. Um, I I know there are kids here playing lots of video games and stuff, but when you go outside after school, the kids are all outdoors.
Mm,
And even like you go down to New Orleans and they're outdoors. Like,
that's cool.
there's so many festivals, music festivals, food festivals, family friendly things that where they encourage the locals to go. They have locals day for everything down here where everything's discounted for locals, and I just love the community down here. And I just can't I just am amazed though that the kids down here, it's just a kind of a different breed. I don't know what it is, but like the week
It's a
of
different
Mardi Gras,
culture.
yeah, week of Mardi Gras, no school, go to Mardi Gras. You know, like it's and it's
America
just
is big, but it's also like Europe. Like every state is a different country.
Very
Like
much
I think
so.
that
yes.
we
I have
try to
lived in
imagine that
four different.
California is like Nevada, which is like Texas, which is like Louisiana. Like we don't exist on the same planes. There's
No,
completely different countries.
I've lived in four different states now, all over the United States, and they are all very different.
Yeah, yeah. So, it's interesting to think about how gaming is different in all those states. You see it in conventions throughout, right? But living in Colorado, so I moved back to Denver. I love it. I was kind of in the Boulder area, but now I'm in Denver. Oh man, it's like a good combination of being out with family, fun things to do during the summer, and also nerds. And I'm
Yeah.
so impressed. I don't know if you guys heard that. Shout out to Genghis Khan out
Yeah.
here. It's a really good one.
We
I
need
know
one
that
being
one.
here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Do
I
you
you
keep
usually
should.
go?
I was a special guest a couple of years ago. Yeah.
I
My
keep
So
goodness.
I keep telling Luke
I
Gygax that we
prefer
need
the
a.
smaller cons because A, you get a flavor of the community. There's a lot less bullying because everyone's accountable because they live there, right? It's at the bigger cons that there's so much drama. I mean, I love the big cons, like I love them.
Oh,
But
somebody's always crying.
yeah. So it's like I like looking at the pride of the smaller communities. Like they are proud of themselves and they're proud to showcase, like everyone's proud to showcase what their participation is. So I'm talking like these 500 to 1,500 person conventions.
Kubla Khan is another great
Oh
small
yeah, I
one in
heard
San
Kubla Khan's
Francisco.
really good. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That
Hmm.
one is good for everybody, like the
Yeah.
merchants and the con goers.
Well,
Yeah.
and the painting community at Kubla Khan is really growing. They
Oh,
have
really?
a painting competition that's getting bigger
Nice.
and bigger. Yeah. I'm
That's
excited
awesome.
about that.
Yeah.
I keep telling Luke Gygax we need a Gary Con South. But running one con is such like I don't think people realize the how how much work it is to put on a successful convention. Anyone
Yeah,
can
and
like
that's
throw,
like it's not a money maker. These
yeah.
people don't do it because they make money. That is the the opposite. It takes both time and money to put it together, and then you hope to break even,
Yeah.
right? And if you can actually pay everybody, oh, even better. People don't realize this. I was running the D&D events out of Meltdown Comics, and I think we had a Wednesday night game and a Sunday game. I must have spent thousands of dollars just bringing pancakes for Sunday night, Sunday pancakes, bringing snacks, making sure everyone had what they needed. And it's like, that's just the way it is. And then with this live streaming, like I didn't even make money until 6 years into my gaming community or my gaming, interactions. So it was like the live streaming, it was just boom, boom. I probably put in I think when we actually did the numbers, it was $150,000 that I put into live streaming.
That sounds right.
And then, yeah, but like it was my hobby. So of course I'm gonna do that. Did I talk about it then? No. I did not talk about it then because it's none of anyone's business. But people who showed up had a good time. The streams went really well, and that's all that was important, right? Do I want that money back? Absolutely not. Because the
Well, you got the
experience.
experiences which you can take with you
Yeah.
wherever you go. It's to me, it's like gaming is more of like a passion, than my average player. I'd say the average player, it's a hobby, but for the people that kind of make it happen for, organize and get people together and put on a really successful game. It's much more of a passion and it has to be because the game masters out there put in so much work, and I
This
don't think
wasn't a
people
part of my
realize.
life plan. This was not even close to a part of my life plan. I was going to be a comic book artist and a want to do animations. Like I went to school for this, for other things, and just made a 13-year side quest into gaming, and was like, it just that passion was overwhelming. All of a sudden, like everyone got into it, and it just kind of blew up into something amazing. And now I can use that doing something else and keep the passion
Yes, that's
without
the
spending all the
dream,
money.
really. I mean, when my little, corner of the gaming world actually started turning a profit, I was just like, man, I could actually like buy some miniatures without my wife getting mad. Like it doesn't come out of the till, the family till. It comes out of like this little passion project I've got going on. And at that point, then it was like, the sky's the limit. You get to
Yeah.
really, develop really incredible stories and have all of the sets and whatnot that can really bring the immersion to a new level, which is always my goal. It's like
Yeah.
immersion's number one. But I can't say enough about how much gaming in general has brought to my life. So I can imagine like everybody here that's Jacoya and of course you Satine. It's one of those things that it's difficult to put to measure. I mean, because um, for me it's like 46, 47 years of my life have daydreaming in school and class and being at work, like writing post-it notes down, notes like I just thought of something to do to my players, kind of thing. It's
Yeah.
it's like one of those things that you're always churning through.
Yeah.
So
All right, Satine, it was wonderful having you on, and I would love to have you back. I think that we have so much more that we need to talk about and
Yes.
discuss and explore.
Absolutely.
Yes, Machinations of the Space Princess with amazing art. I love the women in here. I like the way you've drawn them. They're sexy, they're empowered. It's a great book.
I
All
do
right.
want to say that it was his writing that inspired the art and made it so easy to make the art. So it is the book itself, it's the creator. He's the one that brought it to life, and I just made it a little more visual.
You did a
well,
great job at that.
Thanks.
I definitely we're gonna do a video where we actually talk about the guts of the game, but it really pops for me uh, what the artwork has done to kind of set the stage, and I have a lot to say about it, but we of course wanted to keep the focus on you today,
Thanks.
uh, because you do, I mean, artwork is always instrumental to any RPG product and I think that it really, at least for me, that's what always drew me initially to gaming was I saw the art and I was like, whoa, what is this? And then you get in and I think it's you did it
Thank you.
for the Space Princess. So we'll talk
And
more
I'm
about her
excited.
later.
Well, yeah, and I'm excited to see what happens with your Kickstarter. You're gonna have to keep us in the loop and yeah, send us anything and everything. We would love to take a look at it. So,
Awesome. Thank you so much.
all right, guys. Well, as always, come back and have another round on us.
Woohoo!
Are you Captain Lincoln F. Stern?
I am?
Lincoln Stern, you stand here accused of 12 counts of murder in the first degree, 14 counts of armed theft of Federation property, 22 counts of piracy in high space, 18 counts of fraud, 37 counts of rape, and one moving violation. How do you plead?
Not guilty.
Not guilty. Are you nuts?
It's okay, Charlie. I got an angle.
Call the first witness.
But the prosecutor's got you cold. You're as guilty as a cat in a goldfish bowl.
The prosecution calls Hanover Fist.
Calling Hanover Fist.
Hanover Fist! Calling Hanover Fist.
Listen, Stern. Change the plea to guilty. Throw yourself on the mercy of the court.
I told you, Charlie. I got an angle.
But the most we can hope for is to get you buried in secrecy so your grave don't get violated. Plead guilty.
Shut up, Charlie. I got an angle.
What angle?
Him.
State your name for the record.
I am Hanover Fist.
You know the defendant, Captain Stern?
Yes, I know Captain Stern, and never did there live a kinder, more generous man.
I promised him 35,000 Zuleks to testify on my behalf.
He's an overflowing cup, filled with the very cream of human goodness. In all the time I've known him, he's never done anything immoral.
See?
Unless maybe the preschooler's prostitute ring.
Huh? And he's never done anything illegal.
Unless you count all the times he sold dope disguised as a nun.
I don't know.
He's always been a good, law-abiding citizen.
Oh, give me a break!
Of the Federation and
Shut up! Shut up! Shut up!
Of a community-conscious individual.
Stern! He's nothing but a low-down, double-dealing, backstabbing, larcenous, perverted worm. Hanging's too good for him. Burning's too good for him. He should be torn into little bitsy pieces and buried alive.
Hanover.
I